I don't know if you agree, but I always think this is a really important point what you're mentioning here, because I think for the wider public that's at least following the space industry to some extent, people are very mesmerized and at this point in time knowledgeable about the cost decrease that has taken place with regard to launch costs, right? That we have gone from, I don't know, let's say that the space shuttle, like $25,000 or so a kilogram in a good year to sub $3,000 on a Falcon 9. But I personally think a lot of people are actually not aware about the cost decreases you are describing, or the performance improvements, cost decreases, whichever you want to look at it, right? And which I think are equally, if not more important.
I think you're 100% correct, Raphael. I think it's actually one of the biggest misunderstandings at the current point in time of what is driving this revolution of leveraging space to solve problems on Earth. The cost of launch has come down. No doubt. And if you take a really long view, you just took a 30-year view,
sure.
It has come down in order of magnitude. If you take a 10-year view, if you take a 15-year view, it has come down maybe by a factor of like 3, maybe 4, right? Which is impressive. However, there are 2 other things that completely dwarf that change. The first one is the capability improvement for a fixed price point, which over a period of 15 years is 1,000-fold. And over a period of 20 years, it is 10,000-fold. So it's absolutely massive. It is truly Moore's law that is happening here. Now, the equally important other component here is not the cost of launch, but the availability of launch. The genius of Bob and Jordy was that they recognized when a rocket goes up, and again, not necessarily that widespread, there is a rocket going up somewhere on planet Earth every 3 days, roughly. So there are plenty of rockets going up and have been going up for many, many decades. And they pick up big, massive payloads. But that big, massive payload is not perfectly matched to the thrust of the rocket. And so traditionally, you match that with some extra water and sand. And the genius idea of Jordy and Bob in 1999 was, why don't we replace some of that sand and water with small satellites? And that was then creating the birth of secondary launch opportunities, which exploded access to launch. Spire has launched with 10 different launch providers. We've done 30 different launch campaigns. And so the combination of a faster than Moore's law capability improvement and an exponential increase in access to space, those are the true drivers, even though they're not as sexy as seeing rockets going up and seeing that the price of a SpaceX launch keeps on coming down.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a side note for our listeners who may not know, Peter has mentioned the names Bob and Jordy here a few times, and those are not sort of like common friends of pals of me and Peter. They're actually the co-inventors of the CubeSat standard. The CubeSats, as listeners may know, is basically the standard where you have a cube with a 10 centimeter side length, and it's using basically, you can use an increasing number of standardized components to construct satellites. That actually brings up another sort of important trend, which I guess we have implicitly but not explicitly mentioned, right? Which is miniaturization. I think you alluded to that when you're saying, like, the power of what used to be a Cray 2 supercomputer is now in our cell phones. But the same thing has happened with regard to satellite technology as well, right? And that, of course, is a nexus to then the launch cost decreases, right? Because it means that the same capability is going to be occupying a smaller space, probably has much lower mass, which means your launch cost is lower too, which means you have a double whammy effect.
That is absolutely correct. The design criteria for satellites have a lot in common with the design criteria for consumer electronics, UAV, robotics. And so we get to leverage the advancements that are happening there and adapt them for use in space. And miniaturization is one of those big elements.
And so maybe if we make this tangible, let's talk about your own satellites. I believe they're called the Lemur satellites. How big are they? How much do they weigh? And sort of what kind of capabilities do they have?
So our Lemur, which is an acronym not just for a very pretty and funny animal, but it stands for Low Earth Multi-Use Receiver, is a satellite about the size of a bottle of wine, 5 kilograms, 6 kilograms, and it has little wings. We call them solar panels, but you can think of them as wings, so to speak. And it has multiple capabilities. That's where the M stands for multi-use. It is tracking ships which carry 17 trillions of global trade. It tracks planes, the aviation industry, and it collects highly crucial weather information. And again, to talk about the miniaturization here, those small satellites today produce in aggregate more data, for example, on the weather side than just as far as we know the rest of the world combined, a particular type of weather data, GPSRO, because of that miniaturization effect and because of the scale effect of doing something many times. We now have the world's largest RF sensing constellation in the world. And so that effect that you just mentioned beforehand really is driving that massive capability improvement here for the LEMUR satellite.
And you said 3 kilograms?
5
kilograms. But so I guess that means, I believe sort of the current rideshare cost, or at least published rideshare cost on SpaceX is $5,000 a kilogram. So it means one of those launches for about $25,000. Is that right?
I will have to, you have to do your own math here, and then that genuinely, I think there's great differences if you buy 1,000 kilograms of something, or if you buy 5 kilograms of something, and that applies to grocery supplies just as well as to launch. But the point that you make here is an important one. The massive capacity of those big rockets to launch very large structures at substantially lower cost than, for example, the space shuttle did, is really opening up the space economy to things like, a base on the moon, traveling to Mars, to habitats, hotels and research on orbit, manufacturing on orbit. So it really opens up the capability for the space economy to have much larger structures, because now it is actually becoming affordable to launch something of, a ton, 10 tons, 100 tons, because there are so many, an increasing number of vehicles that are capable of launching larger masses, and that is bringing down the cost, together with all the ingenuity that those launch companies have, like reusability and building larger rockets and better launch pads.
So certainly, and we shall talk about Starship in a few minutes for sure.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.